stuff with me that
In the
day
years
about
since,
Russell, I guess.
two things have changed our attitude to remembering the soldiers of the First World War.
The internet has opened up so much information to people, and this has really opened people's eyes into seeing history in a different way and being able to research it to such a great extent. It's also something to do with a rediscovery of our past, a past that we were kind of aware was there, but we were never really encouraged to investigate. And certainly since we formed our association, which is in 2002, which is 6 years ago, we were very worried that time when we decided to hold a Remembrance Day ceremony. We weren't worried so much for any physical harm or anything like that, but we were just afraid nobody would turn up. And we've held one every year since. And, you know, the numbers increase every year and the interest increased.
One recurring theme among the people I've talked to has been this: we weren't taught about the First World War in school. We knew nothing about it. For reasons of history, it didn't fit in with the new Ireland which was born after partition. So there was a real ignorance about the facts. It was, you might say, buried. But now there's been a resurrection. Today's generation is learning about World War I and Ireland's part in it.
Jerry Casey is teaching these 15-year-olds about the different reasons why Irish men joined the army.
Right. Now, these guys are all in the same trenches, fighting in the same army with each other. If these soldiers were at home in Ireland, what would be going on? Civil War. It's amazing. They would fight and die with each other. In the Western
It's
Front,
so different from
Ireland,
his childhood experience growing up in County Kerry.
Lots of casualties.
Don't remember anything about World War I except that the Brits beat the Germans. We didn't know that any Irish people had been fighting with the British Army in World War I, so all of that would have had to been asked maybe 30, 40 years ago, and it wasn't.
But you knew about 1916?
We knew about 1916. Everybody knows about 1916, but no input whatsoever on World War I.
Right, so we go back to 1914. This would be the Serbian branch of what we could call the Provisional IRA.
Today, there's a more balanced approach to Irish history, but there's still room for improvement.
Slowly but surely it's coming that way. At the moment it's First World War, how Britain dealt with First World War and all her allies. They haven't really gone down into where we were in the First World War and what we did and what we contributed to the First World War yet. But I'm sure there's an opening there. There's room for improvement. There's a couple of books and it's just merely glanced at and done, and again straight away a couple of pages later we're straight into the big issue of the 1916 Rising. There is more room for improvement, yes.
Back in Northern Ireland, some people have been on a steep learning curve in Londonderry. The Diamond War Memorial in the city centre has been the subject of lengthy research, lasting for over a year. Mary McElhinney and Trevor Temple have painstakingly gone through each of the 756 names and built up a picture of those who did not return home 90 years ago. The findings, which should not have surprised, did shock many people in Derry.
As far as I was concerned as a nationalist and a Catholic, I grew up beside the memorial itself as a child, and it was always viewed then as belonging to the other side. That was a misconception, or the perception that the nationalists that had at the time. I personally passed it often and didn't even realise the fact that it was there. But it didn't belong to the nationalists. But now, since we've done the research, we've discovered that 52% of the names belong to the Protestant Unionist people and 48% of the names belong to the Catholic Nationalist people.
Did this surprise you?
Well, a surprise to a lot of people here in the city when the fact was released to the press. We got a mammoth amount of coverage. But during that period I had been investigating the names. I had always had a gut feeling that it would be almost 50-50.
So you weren't surprised?
Well, I wasn't surprised, no. And considering the political circumstances leading up to the First World War and the reasons why the people joined, no, I wasn't really surprised.
The nationalists, who a lot of them still don't approve of the poppy for their own personal reasons, they leave bouquets of flowers or single roses as a little gesture of their own personal remembrance and commemoration.
How comfortable are you wearing a poppy?
I'm fine. I have no problem with it. I actually have been to Flanders in Belgium, and actually saw the poppies in the fields where our young London Derry men dropped dead or were shot or were killed. So I have no problem wearing a poppy whatsoever. I'm very proud to wear it.
One of the names on the memorial is that of John James Diver. He was great-uncle to Gerard Diver, the present mayor of Derry. In his parlour in the Guildhall, he shows me a photograph of John James and his brother William. William was Gerard Diver's grandfather.
I think this is one of the great misconceptions that has happened over recent years and decades. Originally the poppy was a symbol to represent all the fallen of the First World War. Now obviously over time people put particular significance on items, and unfortunately I think in the case of the poppy this has happened where people have thought that it is just synonymous with one side of the community. I don't believe that to be the case. From my point of view as an Irish nationalist, I'm very proud of the fact I'm an Irish nationalist, but I see no contradiction with my sense of Irish nationalism and my ability to be able to wear a poppy as well, to remember people that died in the World Wars.
But that's not the way it's been seen in parts of Northern Ireland. The past 40 years have coloured some people's views of commemoration.
In the early days of the Troubles, the effect on remembrance was that it became politicised. And now it's popular to say that it was politicised by unionists. But in fact, the people who were carrying out the violence, the people who were shouting abuse at anybody who wore a poppy, the people who were spitting on poppy sellers, were not unionists. And they, in my view, were the people who really politicised or attempted to politicise remembrance. Thankfully, we've come a long way from there. And we've now got to the point where we can see nationalist mayors, for example, laying wreaths on war memorials. We can see nationalist politicians and even Republican politicians going to visit the war graves in France. And hopefully we'll stay on that road.
In recent years, we have had the whole political zeitgeist has changed in Northern Ireland. We've moved away from the politics of dominance and triumphalism to the politics of sharing. And this is part of that sharing process.
What was once a virtual taboo, acknowledging that nationalists fought in the war, is now being confronted. And nowhere is that more apparent than in the far west of Ireland.